Welcome to the podcast. We're going to talk some NASCAR here with Rod Mullins. I'm Chris Graham, and we'll talk about Martinsville. Rod, we'll get ready for Phoenix, the championship race this weekend. But we'll start actually back in the courtroom. We were talking last week about the latest in the charter suit, the antitrust suit filed by 2311 Racing, Front Row Motorsports against NASCAR. Last week, the case was in the mediation phase, and you wrote a piece for Dickinson Media and for Augusta Free Press this week about some developments. What's the latest?
Yeah, some late developments last night, and it was a surprise because I think a lot of people were hoping something like this was going to happen, and then there were others that didn't see this happening as quickly as it did. But the latest news is a significant one for 2311 and for Front Row Motorsports. A federal judge, he dismissed NASCAR's counterclaim against them. Now, their counterclaim, I should say, was the alleged 2311 co-owner Curtis Polk. We've not mentioned a whole lot about this guy's name, but he and the teams illegally, that's what NASCAR was saying, colluded with other organizations during charter negotiations. All right. The second thing is the court ruled that NASCAR failed to establish an unreasonable restraint of trade or that it suffered an antitrust injury. Now, it doesn't end the case. The main antitrust lawsuit filed by the teams, which alleges NASCAR unlawfully maintains a monopoly, is still scheduled for trial on December 1st. But this dismissal this weekend, Chris, more than anything, weakens NASCAR's legal position just a little bit more as they head toward the championship weekend. And they have stated that they are still seeking a swift resolution before the trial. So, I mean, anything could happen between now and this coming weekend at Phoenix, or for that matter, between now and December 1st. And one of the things that kind of caught me off guard today, I was doing a little bit of research, and part of the other things of the lawsuit, so to speak, when they go to court, if they go to court in December, one of the things is NASCAR and 2311 and Front Row Motorsports, they cannot talk ill about one another. They cannot swap little jabs, and they cannot do these sort of things. It's almost like a childish playground fight is what it sounds like more than anything else. So we've got this. It's a win for 2311 and Front Row Motorsports, proving beyond the shadow of a doubt, I think, to the judge that, there was no collusion going on illegally or anything like that. I think all that 2311 and Front Row was trying to find out, what, if anything, do you guys know of how this charter system works? How does this charter system work? Because based on what we see, it doesn't favor us very well. And I think that's what it pointed out more than anything else.
Yeah, and I'm reading from your story here, and it's just from a legal perspective is almost comical what NASCAR was arguing that a
Right.
team owners meeting in 2023 amounted to an illegal cartel that harmed media rights negotiations, and that it was an unreasonable restraint of trade, which you mentioned earlier. And what this does is this ruling from Judge Kenneth Bell is it guts a part of the NASCAR defense, which had tried to paint the team's joint efforts to get a better deal is anti-competitive. That's just crazy. Bell determined that, and this is, I mean, this is the truest statement I think we can possibly say. He determined that
Mhm.
the boycott that was just a negotiating tactic that, quote, appeared to have little impact. Appeared to have little impact. Yeah, everybody else signed it.
Yeah, I mean that's the truth. That's the way it works. So he's right.
So that's the latest as far as things go. And, I mean, yeah, we had thought perhaps last week, as the two sides were sitting down for that mediation, that maybe we'd have some news. And of course, we're talking here on Wednesday. We normally talk on Mondays. We thought, hey, we're a couple of days closer to the weekend.
Hmm.
Maybe we would get some news on this in terms of some sort of settlement outside of the court setting between the two sides. But, I mean, it's Wednesday. We got nothing. I would assume maybe at this point, I mean, there's no inkling, there's no smoke or anything like that saying that there might be a deal in place. So, I guess it's all full steam ahead to Phoenix, and we'll be waiting to see what happens after Phoenix between then and December 1st.
It kind of reminds me of the way that they vote in the Pope. we'll find out by the time we get to Phoenix if we find out anything. And then if you see a puff of smoke coming up from the courthouse, you're going to know that somebody, hey, they've made a decision on this thing. If they get there to December 1st, before December 1st, and they make a settlement out of the whole thing, I wouldn't be surprised. But, stranger things have happened. I think they're close. I think they're, I don't think they're as far apart as they once were. And I think NASCAR, one other thing I was going to add too that I saw in the little bit of the article today too, 2311 and Front Row Motorsports are not allowed to bring up anything about former President Brian France during the course of the trial. Now, you tell me what Brian France, of course, we've talked about Brian France before and his departure from NASCAR and his bust when he was in the Hamptons, and he was, they looked at him, they pulled him over. He was obviously either intoxicated or he was high on something. But, that kind of was like France riding off into the sunset there, because he effectively kind of left the sport altogether. But the family still maintains control. But there's something funny here about the whole thing that says, we don't want you to bring up anything about Brian France. So I don't know if it's something that Brian France has made a deal about that they are trying to renege on, or they're trying to back off from. I don't know what's going to happen. But yeah, that was an interesting little tidbit that I saw later this afternoon of, no, don't say anything about Brian France. So they can't say anything about him.
That and then I mean just reading, and reading and thinking more through the ruling that you wrote about yesterday for both of our sites. NASCAR really has incentive now to
Mhm.
make a deal here. I mean, just get the best they can get on their terms as best as possible, and kind of move on. And you talked about the puff of smoke coming from the courthouse. What if it's smoke from a burnout? I mean, after a
Yeah,
race is over, so you just never know. He's got
could very well be. And Denny Hamlin's going to have to hope for better things this coming weekend, and also what's coming up for December 1st. He's got to hope, because he didn't have a good performance on Sunday afternoon at Martinsville, and this was probably the best shot of good news they had in quite a while. And to me, this cuts and dries the whole thing about what the case is going to be about, and it just puts NASCAR in a negative light. The way I look at it, it's like you're picking on one of these teams, and one of these teams was at least smart enough, or at least brave enough, to stand up against you guys and to challenge you on the way that you've done things for so long. The rest of the quote unquote, if you want to say it, good old boy network doesn't apply here to Michael Jordan and the rest of them.
I wonder what the hardest thing for Denny Hamlin to do the next few days is going to be. Is it going to be winning in Phoenix this
Right.
weekend, or is it going to be keeping his mouth shut and not saying anything bad about NASCAR?
Right. Well, and I mean, so
Those are
far
both
he's
difficult things.
yeah, so far he's kind of done that here in the last month. He's kind of kept quiet about things, and the only thing that we've heard out of him came from about September, first part of October, where he said all will be revealed. He just sounded like a Swami, is what he sounded like. Chris Berman almost. All will be revealed with this. So, yeah, we'll wait and see if all will truly be revealed coming up before December 1st or by December 1st.
Here's where I'm aging myself. You said Chris Berman. I'm thinking Johnny Carson as Karnak.
Yeah,
Uh,
Karnak.
all will be revealed, and then open up the envelope, and we'll see what the
Yeah,
answer is there.
I make a prediction on the envelope. The envelope will, the outside of it will say "Sis Boom Ba," and then we'll open it up and it say the sound made by an exploding race team or an exploding NASCAR or race organization is what could possibly happen out of this. Yeah, one way or the other, it's going to happen, and when it does happen, folks, don't be surprised. I know there'll probably be litigation. There'll be probably appeals from NASCAR. NASCAR's got the money in their pocket to do it, but NASCAR also could just be the bigger man and walk away from it and say, "Yeah, maybe we haven't been doing things right here for a time being," and then that opens up a door for, well, how can I say this? Union, so to speak. What Richard Petty and them kind of pushed for early on, and then kind of backed off after NASCAR and Big Bill Senior, just put his foot down. He says there's not going to be a quote unquote damn union in here as long as I've got anything to say about it. So who knows how this is going to go after the case goes in whichever direction that we'll see.
I I think that's inevitable. Legally, it just feels inevitable that they're going to allow some sort of collective bargaining. You see it in every other sport. Now, this isn't. We've talked about this. This is NASCAR is a different sport. It's a family-owned business, not a collection of team owners like in the NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, things like that. It's very different. It's not even like the PGA. I'm thinking, PGA Tour
Hmm.
is actually owned by the golfers. So
Yeah.
this is owned by a private family, and so it's different. But yeah, it just feels like the challenge here is going to eventually open things up, and two teams will have been on the forefront of that. So
Right.
okay, let's turn back to the track. So we know we have the championship four coming up this weekend. One of the players in this saga, we talked about Denny Hamlin, is actually among the championship four who will be competing, the four drivers who will be competing for the championship among that bigger race field. Martinsville this past weekend gave us the other two members of the championship four after Hamlin, and who had won the other race?
Chase Briscoe.
Case Briscoe, yeah. So we got the other two. Talk about what happened in Martinsville this past weekend.
Well, it was a race that was pretty much sold out from the looks of the stands. There were a lot of people there. They saw a lot of beating, a lot of banging. We saw Carson Hocevar get spun around, I don't know how many times during the course of this race. But we also saw an early departure from two of the top drivers of that round of eight, and that was Chase Briscoe and Denny Hamlin, both with engine failures. Now, that's a little bit concerning. Briscoe finished 37th, Hamlin was 35th. He made a comment and said there toward the interview, when he was interviewing following getting out of the car, that there just wasn't any sound there for a moment. It just like it shut down and everything shut down. And they knew. And then people were, looking at it. Steve Letarte was looking at it from up in the press box, and he saw the white puff of smoke, and he knew something was up. But this is a concerning sign for these two going into Phoenix, because Phoenix is a racetrack that's stretched out a little bit, but it's flat. It's sort of flat like the same way that Martinsville is. A little bit of banking to it, but if a car can't make it for the 500 laps that they have to do at Martinsville, either because of brakes, rotors, or the engine itself, you're going to have trouble when you go to Phoenix. And that's exactly what we could be seeing. And, Hamlin didn't, well, let's put it this way. Hamlin probably a mixed feeling about this. He's hoping for a better situation when they go to Phoenix, and he's hoping this doesn't happen at Phoenix. But, after it happens this weekend, you've got to wonder, will lightning strike twice? And quite possibly it could. And,
Let me
I
let
think
me
the
inter
real, go ahead.
I was going to say, let me interject here. So what, for I don't know the answer to this. So I bet a lot of people listening in don't know what happens now. So your engine fail, you have an engine failure, knock you out of the race. You're looking forward to next week. So what is the team doing now? Like, what are they doing behind the scenes? I mean, besides just pouring through every possible thing they can do. I mean, yeah, you got to be afraid. Any driver in the world, you got your car parked in your garage and something happens to your vehicle, you're going to be afraid to take it back out again and you might be afraid for a while. What does a NASCAR team do in this kind of situation?
They pour over a lot of telemetry. They're doing that during the course of a race, but I think a lot of it, what they do is they pour over that telemetry. They look at things prior to the engine failure, what was going on, what kind of things maybe spiking according to the telemetry. These guys see it at the racetrack, and they also see it back in Charlotte at their home base, at their track, at their garage, and everything. They see it there, and they're probably looking at certain things, and they're also looking at what could have possibly been the part failure or whatever that made this car possibly mess up and also retire for both of these drivers. They're probably very cautious right now. They probably got their fingers crossed, hoping that they have the problem solved. But a car going 500 laps, just like we've talked about with the Coke 600, it's an endurance race. That Coke 600 is an endurance race, and we get to see how many cars can actually hold up to running at 600 laps, for the whole thing, for the mileage out of it. This is going to be another test at Phoenix because, you know, really no big problems, I could say, at Martinsville with the way of trying to maneuver around the track. You're always trying to keep that inside groove, though. But, this was kind of a shock. I wasn't expecting this, especially out of Joe Gibbs Racing, for two cars to give up the engines right there toward the very end. And then Ty Gibbs and, the rest of the engines that come out of 2311 that they get from Joe Gibbs, they worked fine. They did well, although some of them didn't finish as well as they had hoped. Bubba Wallace was one. You also had Ty Gibbs in that bunch, and you also had Tyler Reddick. But they ran well there for a while. But, Chase Briscoe and Denny Hamlin, you've got to be almost in a way, like you said, scared or at least a little bit fearful. What's going to happen if I get in this car? And this is our chance in the spotlight here to try to win a championship. And the engine goes. I mean, there's nothing they can do about it, but it's in the back of their mind.
So let me follow up on that then. If the cars are all standardized, it's not like the
Mhm.
old days where you just built your engine and passed specs.
Right.
The cars are pretty much standardized. So I mean, every car setup should be pretty similar. But that said, I
Mhm.
mean, do you have a backup car you can use? I mean, what would a team likely do in this situation? Because I can agree, I wouldn't want to go into a championship race and be like, I wonder if a car is even going to finish.
Well, you've got a backup car. They always bring a backup car to the track just in case they get in testing or practice and they really tear the car up and so forth. And they have to this time around because, it's a long haul back to North Carolina to be able to go and get parts or whatever you need when you're, what, 2.5, 3 hours from Bristol. You're 2.5, about 2 hours or so forth from Martinsville. You're right there in Charlotte. It presents a little bit of a problem. So I'm sure the teams are going to come prepared. They're going to have plenty of backup stuff just ready for them. And that car, that's going to be the important thing. And, I think it could be this. They may not qualify very good, but sometimes it's good to be in the back of the pack to kind of see how the rest of the race is going to go while you pick everything apart going up to the front. You just have to hope that you don't run into somebody that's going to put you in the wall, rub you the wrong way, or whatever the case may be, or rear end you as you're on that track. But we're talking a track that's a little bit more spaced out than what you have at Martinsville. So there'll be some things that'll be taken into consideration and have there just in preparation that anything might happen.
Okay, so I don't think we've talked yet about the guy who won the race and won his way into the championship for William Byron. Boy, he led 304 laps, but still had to rally at the end. What a
Right.
terrible day that would have been to, dominate the race and then maybe not even make the playoffs or no, continue in the playoffs afterwards. But he did. He made the late pass and won the race. And who was it? Kyle Larson that also qualified on points.
Kyle Larson got in on it and everything, and it went down to points between Kyle Larson and Christopher Bell. Let's put it this way to you. Ryan Blaney had a chance at this race. He was there and dominating there for so many laps, and then next thing you know, Byron goes and he makes the bump. It's a bump and run on him with 43 laps to go, and that changed the whole course of the race and also the tires. The tires were doing really well this time around. Nothing of a blistering or anything of that nature, but they did better when they had better tires and cleaner tires when they were out there on the track. And they took a chance on some tires a couple of times, and he beat Blaney to the line by 0.71 seconds and 0.717 seconds, I should say, to lock himself in. And, Blaney was one of those people, I think 7 DNFs on the season. And there had been nobody that had made it to the championship race with 7 DNFs. And, he finished on the upside, but it still didn't work out to his, to the positive side for him. But Larson in his 5th place finish was just enough to edge out Christopher Bell, who finished 7th. And Larson, of course, punched his ticket by a razor thin margin of just 7 points. And that's the way it went between Christopher Bell and Kyle Larson that entire day. They were either 6 points to the good, 6 points to the negative. One way or the other, they were fluctuating fluctuating, and then Larson ended up picking up the win, or picking up that spot with just 7+ points to his name.
What else about in Martinsville is noteworthy? Though, yeah, I mean, it's great for fans being able to watch and see on the scoreboard there as the race is going on how the Final Four is playing out, that kind of thing, and then the dramatics there with the who won and that kind of thing. What else is worth getting into?
Well, I think the big thing was probably what happened with driver Sam Mayer. Sam Mayer used to drive for Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Junior Motorsports. He's driving now for the Haas factory team, is what he's driving the car, and ended up he raced a little bit rough with a lot of people. Jeb Burton was one of those, as Mayer intentionally wrecked Jeb Burton on the cooldown lap after the checkered flag at Martinsville. And this is very reminiscent of Days of Thunder, when Russ Wheeler's coming around the track and celebrating his win and so forth. And out comes Cole Trickle from the pits, and he's telling him, change my tires. He goes back out onto the track and he slams him. And Mayer went and wrecked him, and Jeb Burton was like, they asked him about revenge, and I can go ahead and say it, I'll say it. Burton was to the point, he says, I don't give two craps, and I said it in the PG rated version, I don't give two craps about Sam Mayer, but payback is going to come one way or another. Well, NASCAR looked at it from this past weekend, Elton Sawyer in competition. They deemed it a violation of the member conduct code. He was already eliminated from the championship four, but the penalty means he's going to miss the season finale. And so the Haas factory team stated they are not going to appeal the decision. They know it's wrong. They know he shouldn't have done it in the first place. And so Ryan Sieg will be driving the car this weekend at Phoenix.
There we go. Well, that's yeah. I mean, you gotta keep tempers down as much as possible, certainly, to make things safe out there. So now we look forward to this weekend, Phoenix. This is what we've been talking about for months, dating back to February when we were getting ready for Daytona. The first time through the season opener at the Daytona 500. Now here we're finally almost here. What do you think? I mean, it's. I always ask you this question, and always then I feel guilty. I say, well, handicap, what's going to happen? And there's 40 drivers in the field, or whatever the number might be that particular week, and picking one out of 40 is just crazy. All right, one out of four now. Our chances are better here in that sense. I'm not asking you to assess the whole field of those four. I mean, the way it works, right? The person who finishes the best out of those four, whether they win the race or they finish second and somebody else who's a non-playoff driver wins, the best finisher of those four is a champion.
Well, I mean, Denny Hamlin leads the field with wins this year, 6 wins. William Byron has 3. He's been the most dominant driver this season, leading about almost 1,300 laps. The numbers point to a different driver for the title, and it doesn't look like it's going to be Denny Hamlin. I kind of went back and looked at some of the stats, and this is what I pulled up. William Byron boasts the best career average finish at Phoenix at 8th place. And that consistency is a huge factor. Kyle Larson is the only former champion in the field and has the advantage of having clinched his title at Phoenix. Now, his crew chief, Cliff Daniels, arguably probably one of the most refined on pit road, which can make all the difference on a short, flat track with critical restarts. And we also have to throw in a good word in there, too, for Rudy Flugel, who is also William Byron's crew chief on that. Now, Hamlin's recent mechanical woes that I mentioned at the beginning, including the starter, throttle cable, and the engine problems in the last 5 weeks, has raised some serious concerns about the reliability in this winner-take-all race. So as it all breaks down, even though Byron had a dominant run and you had Kyle Larson in there finishing up, and you've got Denny Hamlin looking for his first championship, and of course Byron and also Briscoe in there as well looking for a championship, I'm going to go out on the limb, and I'm going to make the prediction and just say by the numbers, the average, how things have went this past season, I kind of pick William Byron to win the race and his first Cup Series championship. So he starts the season with a big win at Daytona, back-to-back Daytona wins. He finishes the season up in Phoenix with his first Cup Series championship. And I think that average of 8th means all the difference in the world to him right there. If he can run consistently near the top there in the top 5, top 8 per se, he'll have a chance to win it at the very end. But stranger things have happened. We could see anything take place like it did on this past Sunday when Carson Hocevar, who I mentioned, flipped around something like 3 or 4 times, got spun around. Definitely not earning respect or love from Daniel Suarez, who they're going to be teammates next year when he goes over to Spire Motorsports. Anything can happen, and that's one of the things we have to realize about a NASCAR race. Byron could end up winning it because of the consistency. He may not win the race, but he could win because of the points and how many points he has at the end of the stages. And that gets him across. That'll be the thing that gets him across. Could he win? Yeah, quite possibly. After what he did at Martinsville, I think he could probably win out of it, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I mean, so many factors at play here. Denny Hamlin's engine troubles, the car troubles you've been talking about. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, throwing in the idea of teams helping each other,
Mm-hmm.
teammates helping each other out, blocking or whatever they may need to do, pushing as the case may be. Manufacturer cars who may be willing to, lend a helping hand in some way, shape, or form if things come down to it late in a race. So, man, there's a lot of intrigue here. That's part of why we like to watch.
Well, let me give you another stat here, too. Denny Hamlin, career wins at Phoenix. There'd be some people that swear up and down he's won at Phoenix. He's not won at Phoenix. A playoff win in 2019, but he has career wins at Phoenix, nothing. He's averaged 10.9 on the finish at Phoenix when he's been there. Of course, I mentioned Byron to you, Kyle Larson. He's right in there at about 10th. He got one championship at Phoenix. Chase Briscoe has one career win, and that was in the spring of 2022 when he was driving for Stewart-Haas Racing. So he kind of comes into this a little bit of an unknown. He's got an average finish of about 15.6. So right there, I mean, it's clear Byron, if he has everything go according to plan, he could be the eventual, he could be the champion out of it.
Yeah, and so and Larson, right? The only previous champion in the field of the four, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we three guys with the chance to become first time champions. Hamlin towards the end of a career, and of course with the intrigue of this ongoing lawsuit. I mean, there'd be a story there to say the least. So.
Mm-hmm.
Man, a lot to get into. Well, Rod, what do anything else in NASCAR? I mean, we're getting ready for the big weekend here, so man, I think we've covered a lot here. Anything else to throw in?
Basically, just the silly season is starting to kick in. I mentioned about Daniel Suarez leaving Trackhouse and going over to Spire. There's going to be a lot of other changes taking place here over the next couple of weeks, going into December. So, the field's wide open right now at this point. We'll just have to see what's going to be dealt with. There's still a rumor going around, and I posted this to you a couple of weeks ago. There's still some thoughts in there that Spire Motorsports may end up getting Kyle Busch. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but there's still that rumor floating around that he has the best chance of going over there and being able to do something with what they have. But yeah, I've really not seen a whole lot out of Spire Motorsports this season, except for Carson Hocevar hitting people and also spinning out a couple of times. Justin Haley, he's caused some issues out on the track. So this is a young team now with a little bit of experience in having Suarez in there. Hocevar will probably improve maybe a little bit if they can work over their issues and work over their problems. Here's another one too. Michael McDowell is at Spire Motorsports too. These two had a fight a number of years ago, and Suarez was not too pleased with Michael McDowell whatsoever, the way he raced him out there while they were testing. And so, there's going to have to be some kumbaya moments here, I think, by the time we get into this start of the 2026 season. Going to have to be a lot of kumbayas and a lot of come to Jesus speeches, I think, before it's over with.
Yeah, the way guys have to change teams, sometimes the way teams change their drivers. You may hate a guy, and
Right.
then you may be his teammate, so you got to watch out there as far as that goes, no doubt.
Yep.
It's Sunday, 3 o'clock Eastern time. We'll have coverage here on Augusta Free Press, of course, Dickinson Media as well. If there's any updated news during the week, check us out. Rod, as always, thank you for your time and your insight.
I appreciate it, Chris. Thanks.